Hi, this is Alex from phpacademy.org and back with another video for the new Boston. Now in this tutorial we are going to go on from our previous tutorial where we installed XAMPP for Windows. Now that we're at this stage where we've installed XAMPP, we've accessed localhost, we've tested that phpMyAdmin works, so we've run our MySQL databases for when we look at databases a lot later on, and we've also brought to attention the XAMPP control panel here, which allows us to start and stop particular services. And the services that we've focused on are Apache and MySQL because these are two that we're going to use most frequently. Okay, so now this tutorial is basically going to cover how to create your first PHP file, and we're going to do some little bit of output in it, nothing major because we have other tutorials explaining output and the PHP info function as well. So have a look at the other tutorials and you'll find some great information on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we need to think about opening up this folder here. Let me just bring it into view. This folder here called XAMPP, and this is at c:\XAMPP by default. Depending on how you installed your XAMPP installation, depending on how you ran the installation, this might be different, but by default it's c:\XAMPP, or whatever drive you've installed it to. So replace this with your drive letter. Okay, so in here we've got a few folders you can see, some of which are useful to us, some of which are not. We have our PHP installation folder, which contains all our DLLs, php.ini, so let's find that. We've got php.ini here, etc, etc. So there's another tutorial on php.ini, so go and check that out. Okay, so htdocs is the folder that I want to focus on in this tutorial because we're going to be creating our first file. Now inside htdocs, at the moment it's a bit of a mess for me, I've got a few files in here, but we want to create our PHP file in here. So let's just open up our browser. So you know now that we access our website from, or our local server from localhost. Now we don't need to do localhost/htdocs/ and our file, because htdocs here, in here is where is the root directory, if you like, for where our file should be. So let's go ahead here and I'll create a new text document, and I'm going to call this my first file.php. Now in Windows I have extension naming enabled, so I can automatically name my extension, but if you can't do it this way, you can see I've got, if you change a file name extension, blah blah blah, click yes, and that's changed now to a PHP file. Now this C icon you see is my text editor, my default text editor, and my default text editor is context. So usually, you might have Notepad as your default text editor, but I recommend, if you're going to start learning PHP, download a good text editor. I use Context, I've always used Context and I prefer it. However, some people prefer to use Notepad++ or even just Notepad. And I mean, there are many out there that you can use, depending on what platform you're in as well. You might be running a Linux system, so you may have different text editors available to you. So I've created this file like this. Now what you can do is, let's delete that and let's go over to my text editor. So I've got my text editor open here. I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to go save as, and I'm in my htdocs folder here. So I'm going to type my first file.php, and then down here I'm going to save as type all files to make sure that the extension's read. Now watch what happens to this just up here, this text files bit here, when I click save. So let's get this into view as well. I'm going to click save, and you can see that's automatically changed syntax highlighting for my file. So now the PHP extension is applied, we can see that file's been created there for us. The extension has been applied, and now syntax highlighting has been turned on. Now syntax highlighting, if you've ever programmed before, you'll know, highlights specific parts of the syntax, so constructors, variables, string data and integers, things like that. Just everything will be highlighted differently depending on how your text editor handles that, and you can modify that as well from options menus. But we're not here to talk about that, we're here to talk about the first PHP file. Now inside our PHP file, let's just actually go to our browser first and try and access this. So we know this is saved in c:\\examp and htdocs. So let's go ahead to our browser and type in my first file.php. So remember, htdocs is the root folder, so all we need to do is say localhost / my first file.php. We press enter and this file has been loaded in. Now, because it's a PHP extension, you might think that you can't put HTML data in, but we can in fact write data into here and just either plain text or HTML, and when we refresh, that's displayed on the page. So you can see now that we're accessing our files like we would on a normal server. And again, you can create folders, directories in here, and create things as you wish. So to create the first PHP file, we've done this, and our tags look like this. You'll notice that we have a less than sign, a question mark, PHP, and then we end on a question mark in here. So that's very similar to how we open up and close HTML. So we open up tags like that and end tags like that. In PHP we do this, but that's not what this tutorial is about. We've created our file, we've accessed it from our web server, and now you can go on to the tutorials where we talk about echoing out data to the user and so on and so forth, and you can start your journey learning PHP.